Who are you? Nina Walker's voice broke as the flashlight beam landed on the man chained to the steel chair. Her breath caught in her throat. The room smelled of rust and damp concrete, and the air felt too heavy to breathe normally. The man slowly raised his head. His face was bruised, his lips split, his bare torso marked with cuts that had not fully healed. Even in that condition, his eyes were sharp, focused, unsettlingly calm. "You're not supposed to be here," he said hoarsely. Nina tightened her grip on the flashlight. I was told to check the generator. The power went out." Her voice trembled. "Who are you?" He studied her uniform, noticing the small name tag stitched neatly above her chest. "Nina," he said quietly, "you work here." "That doesn't answer my question," she replied, forcing courage into her voice. "Who are you?" "My name is Daniel Ross." The name hit her immediately. She had seen it online just weeks ago. News articles describing a powerful figure connected to organized crime. Reports saying he had disappeared after a violent dispute over territory. "You're supposed to be dead," Nina whispered. Daniel gave a faint, humorless smile. That was the plan. Her eyes moved to the thick iron cuffs locking his wrists behind the chair. "Why are you here?" she asked, her voice barely steady. "What did they do to you?" Daniel shifted slightly, wincing as the metal restraints pressed against his injuries. "I was taken," he said, "by people I used to do business with." Nina frowned, confused. "Why?" "Because I made a decision they didn't like." He paused, breathing carefully before continuing. "I took control of territory they believed belonged to them. After that, I gave information to the police, enough to shut down some of their operations." Nina stared at him. "You reported them?" "Yes." "Why would a mafia boss help the police?" Daniel held her gaze. "Because some lines shouldn't be crossed, even in my world." The room felt colder. "And the owner of this house?" Nina asked slowly. "Edward Caldwell. What does he have to do with this?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "He provides safe places for problems to disappear," he said. "People with money often protect each other. Your employer is one of the men helping them break me." Nina felt a chill spread through her chest. Edward Caldwell was known publicly for donating millions to hospitals, schools, and veteran charities. "You're saying this is happening here?" she asked. Daniel nodded slightly. "Right under the floors you clean every day." Silence filled the room for a moment. Nina's mind raced. If what he said was true, then the man she worked for was involved in serious crimes, crimes that could destroy lives. She looked again at the bruises across Daniel's ribs. "How long have you been down here?" she asked. "Long enough," he replied. "Why haven't they killed you?" "Because they want information, accounts, contacts, territory routes." He met her eyes again. "I haven't given it to them." Nina hesitated. Everything about the situation felt dangerous. She knew she should leave immediately and forget what she had seen. People disappeared for less. "I shouldn't be here," she said quietly. "That's true," Daniel answered. She took a step backward toward the door. "If they find out you saw me, you won't live long enough to regret it," he added. Her heartbeat quickened. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. "Because now you're involved whether you want to be or not." Nina shook her head. "No, I'm not part of this. I just work here." Daniel's expression remained calm. "You think people like Caldwell allow witnesses?" Her silence gave him the answer. Nina tightened her jaw, trying to steady her breathing. "My mother is sick," she said quietly, unsure why she admitted it. "I can't lose this job." Daniel watched her carefully. "I'm not asking you to help me," he said. "I'm telling you the truth. What you do next is your choice." She looked once more at the restraints, at the injuries, at the evidence that something very wrong was happening beneath a house known for charity dinners and political guests. "Does anyone else know you're here?" she asked. "No," Daniel replied. "That's the problem." Another silence. Nina slowly stepped toward the door again, her thoughts racing faster than she could organize them. "I never saw you," she said. Daniel did not respond, but his eyes followed her. As she reached the doorway, she paused. "Why didn't you tell them what they want to know?" she asked without turning around. His answer came without hesitation. "Because some things cost more than death." Nina closed the heavy steel door behind her. The storm intensified after Nina left the basement, but the greater disturbance followed her upstairs. Every sound inside the Caldwell estate now felt suspiciously amplified: the ticking of the antique hallway clock, the low hum of the refrigerator, the muted voices of kitchen staff preparing dinner. Nothing had changed. Yet everything felt different. Nina washed her hands at the staff sink longer than necessary, staring at her reflection in the small mirror above it. Her expression looked composed, but her eyes revealed something unsettled. She tried to steady her breathing. Panic would lead to mistakes, and mistakes in a house like this could cost more than employment. Mrs. Porter entered the kitchen, reviewing a handwritten list. "Mr. Caldwell's guests will arrive at 7, she said calmly. "We'll be serving roast lamb, asparagus, and potatoes. Please ensure the upstairs guest bathroom is stocked with fresh towels." "Yes, ma'am," Nina replied automatically. Routine had always protected her. Routine created distance between emotion and responsibility. She picked up a folded set of white towels and headed toward the staircase, focusing on familiar tasks. Yet Daniel's voice echoed in her thoughts. People like Caldwell allow witnesses? The question disturbed her more than the sight of the restraints. She finished preparing the guest bathroom, aligning the towels evenly, adjusting the soap dish so it faced the correct direction. Details mattered in households built on reputation. Order created the illusion of control. As she stepped into the hallway, she noticed Caldwell's study door slightly open. That door was usually closed during the day. She paused briefly, reminding herself of the unspoken rule. Staff did not enter private rooms without instruction. Still, she observed something unusual. 2 unfamiliar men in dark suits stood near the study entrance, speaking quietly with Caldwell's personal assistant. Their posture suggested authority rather than hospitality. They were not politicians or donors. They moved like men accustomed to security. Nina lowered her gaze and continued walking. Invisible people survived longer. Dinner preparations continued without interruption. At precisely 7 o'clock, the guests arrived. Their coats were taken, wine was poured. Conversations about markets, investments, and philanthropy filled the dining room. Caldwell appeared confident as always, dressed in a tailored navy suit, speaking with the measured confidence of a man used to influence. His voice carried easily across the table as he described a new charitable partnership supporting veterans transitioning back into civilian life. Several guests nodded approvingly. Older Americans valued patriotism. They valued loyalty. They valued the appearance of moral stability. Nina served plates quietly, moving with careful efficiency. She had mastered the ability to exist near powerful conversations without becoming part of them. Her presence was acknowledged only when necessary. Yet tonight, her attention sharpened. She noticed Caldwell checking his phone repeatedly. His tone remained pleasant, but tension appeared briefly in the tightness of his jaw. One of the unfamiliar men stepped outside twice during the meal, speaking quietly into an earpiece. Security felt heavier than usual. After dessert was served, Nina returned to the kitchen to help clean. The chef complimented the timing of the service. Mrs. Porter expressed approval with a brief nod. Normalcy continued, but Nina no longer believed in normal. Around 9:30, most guests departed. The estate gradually grew quieter. Dishes were washed. Lights dimmed. The household transitioned into nighttime routine. Nina gathered her belongings from the staff locker and stepped outside briefly to breathe the cold air. Snow had slowed to a gentle fall, covering the streets in clean white silence. Her phone vibrated. A message from the hospital billing department. Payment reminder. She closed her eyes briefly, steadying herself. Money dictated choices. Illness accelerated them. Daniel's injuries returned vividly to her mind. She tried to reason through what she had learned. A powerful man was being held captive beneath the home of her employer. If Daniel's story was true, the situation involved organized crime, corruption, and betrayal. Walking away would be safer. Helping him could destroy everything she had left. Yet doing nothing felt like its own kind of risk. When she returned inside, she noticed the security office door slightly ajar. Normally, it remained closed. A small wall monitor displayed camera feeds from different areas of the estate grounds. Nina did not step inside. She only glanced briefly. Múltiple exterior cámaras. Motion sensors along the perimeter fence. Electronic locks controlling basement access. The house was designed to keep people out, or to keep someone in. Mrs. Porter approached from the hallway. "Long day," she said gently. "Yes," Nina replied. "You should rest. Storms make everyone uneasy." There was something reassuring about Mrs. Porter's voice. Older generations often believed stability came from patience rather than confrontation. Nina nodded respectfully. Her shift ended shortly afterward. She drove home slowly through partially cleared streets, her headlights reflecting against fresh snow. Boston looked peaceful under winter's cover, its brick buildings softened by white quiet. At her apartment, she placed her keys beside a framed photograph of her parents taken years earlier at a 4th of July picnic. Her father had been smiling broadly, wearing a faded Red Sox cap. Her mother held a paper plate stacked with grilled corn and watermelon slices. Simple happiness, honest effort, values that once seemed dependable. Nina warmed leftover soup on the stove, barely tasting it as she ate. Her thoughts remained fixed on the hidden basement room, on Daniel Ross, on the truth he claimed to carry. She considered the possibilities carefully. If he was lying, helping him would be foolish. If he was telling the truth, ignoring him would be dangerous. Both options contained risk. Her father had once said that integrity often revealed itself when choices offered no comfort. Before going to sleep, Nina opened her small kitchen drawer and removed a clean white handkerchief. Her mother had taught her never to arrive empty-handed when someone was suffering. She folded the cloth neatly, then hesitated. Helping Daniel would mean returning to the basement. Returning meant crossing a boundary she could never uncross. She slept poorly that night, waking twice to check the time. Morning arrived quietly. Snow covered parked cars and sidewalks, forcing the city to move slower than usual. Nina dressed carefully, choosing practical shoes for icy streets. At work, the atmosphere remained calm. Too calm. Caldwell was not present that morning, according to Mrs. Porter. He had left early for meetings downtown. The security staff rotated shifts as usual, though Nina sensed increased alertness in their posture. Routine attempted to re-establish comfort, but awareness rarely allowed ignorance to return. Around midday, Nina found herself near the service hallway leading toward the lower level. Her steps slowed almost involuntarily. Her heart beat faster. She could continue walking, forget everything, protect herself. Instead, she quietly entered the staff pantry and filled a small bottle with drinking water. She added several packaged crackers from a storage shelf, sliding them carefully into her apron pocket. Her movements felt deliberate now, measured, purposeful. As she approached the basement staircase, she listened carefully for footsteps. The house remained occupied, but attention seemed focused elsewhere. Step by step, she descended. Each sound felt louder than normal, each breath more deliberate. The steel door appeared unchanged, cold, silent, waiting. Nina placed her hand on the handle and paused. Crossing this threshold meant accepting consequences she could not predict. Yet some decisions defined a person long before outcomes appeared. If this moment moved you, tell me in the comments where you're watching from today. Your voice matters more than you think. Stories like Nina's remind us that integrity is often tested in silence, and every choice shapes who we become. If you believe courage still has a place in this world, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and join a community that values truth, loyalty, and justice. Your support helps bring more stories that inspire strength when it's needed most. She opened the door slowly. Daniel Ross remained exactly where she had left him, but now she was no longer just a witness. She had returned with intention. Nina closed the heavy steel door behind her as quietly as possible. The faint click of metal settling into place sounded louder than she expected, echoing across the bare concrete walls. Daniel lifted his head almost immediately, his sharp gray eyes locking onto her with a mixture of surprise and calculation. For a brief moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them felt different this time, heavier, more deliberate. She was no longer here by accident. "I didn't think you'd come back," Daniel said, his voice low but steadier than before. Nina stepped closer, keeping her movements controlled. She removed the small bottle of water from her apron pocket and held it up. "You said no one else knows you're here," she replied. "That means no one is bringing you anything either." A faint expression passed across his face, something close to respect. She unscrewed the cap and hesitated briefly, uncertain how close she should stand. The bruises along his ribs had darkened since the night before. Someone had beaten him recently, not long before she discovered him. "Drink slowly," she said, her tone cautious but firm. Daniel leaned forward slightly as she lifted the bottle to his lips. He drank carefully, pausing twice as if reminding himself not to lose control. When he finished, He exhaled slowly, the tension in his shoulders easing just enough to be noticeable. "You're taking a risk," he said. "I'm aware," Nina replied. She placed the crackers on a small metal table beside the chair, noticing dried blood near the base of one chair leg. The room showed clear signs of repeated visits. Whoever controlled this place intended to keep prisoners alive long enough to extract information. Nina crossed her arms, forcing herself to focus. "Start talking," she said quietly. "If I'm going to be involved, I need to understand what's really happening here." Daniel studied her carefully before speaking. "I used to control shipping routes along the East Coast," he began. "Cargo contracts, distribution channels, ports, legal on the surface, complicated underneath. Territory is everything in that world. And someone wanted what you had," Nina said. "Yes," he replied. "A coalition of groups I once worked with decided they wanted a larger share. I refused." They escalated. Nina nodded slightly, following his explanation. "They started moving product through routes connected to human trafficking networks," Daniel continued. "Women, teenagers, people who disappear because nobody important notices." Nina's expression hardened. "I don't deal in that," Daniel said firmly. "I've done things I'm not proud of, but there are limits. I took control of the ports they were using and shut them out. Then I contacted federal investigators through an intermediary." "You informed the police," Nina said. "Yes. And they found out. They always do." Nina paced slowly across the small room, her thoughts forming faster now. "So Edward Caldwell helps them keep you hidden," she said. Daniel nodded once. "Caldwell provides discreet solutions for powerful people. His reputation protects him. No one questions a man who donates to hospitals and universities." Nina thought of the dinner the previous evening. Wealthy guests praising Caldwell's generosity. Conversations about legacy and moral responsibility. Appearances could be convincing. "How long have you been here?" she asked. "Several weeks," Daniel answered. "And no one has noticed?" "No one who matters," he said quietly. Nina stopped pacing. "What do they want from you now?" "Access codes, account locations, contact networks. If they control those, they control everything I built. And when they get that information, they won't need me anymore." The simplicity of his answer unsettled her. Nina crouched slightly, examining the cuffs securing his wrists. The metal restraints were industrial grade, designed to prevent escape even under extreme force. "They come at night?" she asked. Daniel nodded. "Usually late. They prefer privacy." Nina inhaled slowly, considering the implications. "You said Caldwell is helping them," she said. "Why?" "Money, influence, protection. Men like him believe they can manage criminals without becoming one." "Can they?" "No." The answer came without hesitation. Nina studied the layout of the room more carefully now. The placement of the chair, the positioning of overhead lighting, the absence of cameras inside the chamber suggested the captors trusted physical control more than surveillance. "Is there another entrance?" she asked. "Only the main door you used," Daniel replied. "Security outside rotates every 4 hours." She absorbed the information quietly. "You're already planning something," Daniel observed. "I'm thinking," Nina corrected. He gave a slight nod of approval. "Thinking keeps people alive." She removed a clean white handkerchief from her pocket and gently handed it to him. He hesitated briefly before accepting it, using the cloth to wipe dried blood from the corner of his mouth. "My mother always said clean hands help people think clearly," Nina said. Daniel allowed the smallest hint of a smile. "You trust me very quickly," he said. "No," Nina replied calmly. "I don't trust anyone quickly." "Then why help me?" She considered the question carefully before answering. "Because if what you're saying is true, then ignoring this makes me part of it." Daniel's eyes remained fixed on her. "Most people choose comfort," he said. "Comfort doesn't pay hospital bills," Nina replied quietly. Understanding passed between them. The air in the room seemed less suffocating now, replaced by something steadier. "Purpose. If I help you," Nina continued. "What happens next?" "I disappear," Daniel said. "Then I make sure the people responsible are exposed." "And me?" "You remain uninvolved." She shook her head slightly. "That's not realistic." "No," he admitted. She exhaled slowly. "My job gives me access," Nina said. "Schedules, keys, movement patterns." Daniel remained silent, allowing her to think aloud. "I need time," she continued. If anyone suspects anything, this becomes impossible. You understand the risk, he said. Yes. And you're still here? Yes. For the first time since she had met him, Daniel's expression showed something deeper than calculation. Respect. Whatever you decide, he said, decide carefully. Nina moved toward the door but paused before leaving. One question, she said. Daniel waited. If I walk away now, do they eventually kill you? Yes. His answer was steady. No dramatics. No attempt to manipulate. Just truth. Nina nodded once. That's what I thought. She opened the steel door slightly, listening for any movement in the hallway. Before stepping out, she turned back toward him. Don't do anything that forces them to move you, she said quietly. I won't, Daniel replied. She studied his condition one last time, mentally noting the severity of the injuries, the limitations of the restraints, the structure of the room. Her mind had already begun forming possibilities. I'll come back tomorrow, she said. Then she stepped into the hallway and closed the door behind her. For the first time in years, Nina Walker was no longer simply enduring life. She was making a decision that would change it. When Nina entered the basement again the following afternoon, she moved with greater confidence, though her senses remained alert to every sound above her. The house was unusually quiet. Caldwell had left early for meetings, and most of the staff were occupied preparing for another formal dinner scheduled later that week. Predictability had returned to the estate, but Nina no longer trusted appearances. Daniel looked up as the steel door closed softly behind her. He seemed more alert, despite the visible strain in his posture. Pain had not broken him. If anything, it had sharpened his focus. You came back sooner than I expected, he said. I didn't want to wait, Nina replied. Time is not on your side. She placed a small paper bag on the table beside him. Inside were a protein bar, bottled water, antiseptic wipes, and a simple roll of gauze she had taken from the household medical cabinet. Nothing large enough to be noticed missing, but enough to make a difference. You're organized, Daniel observed. I pay attention, she said. Nina stepped closer and examined the bruising along his ribs. The swelling had increased slightly, but the bleeding had stopped. Whoever had interrogated him had not returned since the night of the storm. Can you stand if the restraints are removed? She asked. Yes, Daniel answered. Not quickly, but I won't slow you down. I'm not removing anything yet, Nina said calmly. First I need information. Daniel nodded once. She continued speaking in a measured voice. I need to understand Caldwell's role clearly. I also need to know who comes here, when they come, and how often. Daniel shifted slightly in the chair. 3 men usually handle questioning. They rotate schedules. Caldwell meets them privately in his study before they come down here. Names? I only know one. Marcus Hale. Nina repeated the name quietly, committing it to memory. He used to work private security overseas, Daniel continued. Now he sells his services to the highest bidder. Nina processed the information quickly. Weapons? Handguns mostly. They rely more on control than force. She considered that carefully. What about cameras? Hallway only, not inside this room. Why? Trust. Arrogance. They believe I'm already defeated. Nina nodded slowly. People in power often underestimated those they considered weak. She cleaned one of the cuts along his shoulder using antiseptic, working carefully but efficiently. Daniel did not react outwardly, though she could see tension in the muscles along his jaw. You said Caldwell works as a facilitator, she said. What does that mean in practice? He provides access, Daniel explained. Properties, transportation routes, financial cover. Wealthy people often assume their reputation protects them from scrutiny. That assumption makes them useful. Does law enforcement suspect him? Not yet. Why not? He donates generously. He hosts fundraisers. He builds relationships with judges and politicians. Respectability can be a very effective disguise. Nina understood that truth well. Many Americans over 45 believe deeply in the value of reputation. Public image often shaped perception more strongly than evidence. My mother used to say, Nina said quietly, that integrity shows in small choices, not large speeches. Daniel looked at her carefully. Your mother sounds wise. She is, Nina replied. She's also very sick. Daniel did not offer sympathy immediately. Instead, he spoke with direct honesty. That's why you're still here. Yes. Silence settled briefly between them, but it felt constructive rather than uncomfortable. I need to know something else, Nina continued. If you leave, will they come after me? Daniel answered without hesitation. Possibly. Possibly isn't helpful. They will investigate anyone with access. Then we make sure they don't find evidence, she said. Daniel's expression changed slightly. You've done this before, he observed. No, Nina replied. But I know how powerful people behave when they think they're untouchable. She stepped back, analyzing the room again. The restraint bolts were anchored deep into the concrete floor. Industrial grade, not something she could remove alone without tools. You mentioned schedules, she said. When is the next visit? Tonight or tomorrow night, Daniel replied. They don't like predictable patterns. Nina considered the timing. Good, she said quietly. Good? The less predictable they are, the more predictable they become. Daniel gave a faint nod. You think like someone who has lived carefully, he said. I think like someone who has had no margin for error, Nina replied. She walked slowly around the chair, studying the positioning of the cuffs. If I open these restraints, you will not be able to move immediately, she said. That means we need time before anyone checks this room. Daniel listened attentively. The security team rotates patrols, he said. Every 4 hours, as I mentioned. What time is the next rotation? Approximately 90 minutes from now. Nina absorbed the detail. That window could become critical. You trust me a great deal for someone you met yesterday, Daniel said. I don't trust you, Nina replied calmly. I trust what I've seen. And what have you seen? A man who could have begged but didn't. Daniel remained silent. That matters, she added. Trust did not appear suddenly. It formed slowly through observation. Nina removed a small notepad from her apron pocket, pretending to check a household inventory list in case anyone entered unexpectedly. What happens after you leave? She asked. I contact people who still owe me loyalty, Daniel said. Then I provide evidence to federal authorities. Will they believe you? They will if the evidence is strong enough. Do you have that evidence? Yes. Where? Daniel hesitated briefly. In secure accounts only I can access. So they need you alive. For now. Nina nodded once more. The situation required precise timing. Mistakes would reduce options quickly. She stepped closer, lowering her voice slightly. If I decide to help you leave, you must follow my instructions exactly. Daniel's expression remained serious. I will. No improvising. No improvising. No violence unless absolutely necessary. I prefer avoiding unnecessary attention. Good. Nina took a slow breath. She had crossed the point where ignoring the situation felt possible. Action now felt inevitable. I'll observe the evening schedule, she said. If there is an opportunity, I'll return. Daniel studied her carefully. Why risk this? He asked quietly. Nina answered without hesitation. Because pretending I didn't see you won't protect me. Daniel understood the truth in that statement. People rarely remained safe after witnessing powerful secrets. As Nina turned toward the door again, Daniel spoke once more. Nina. She paused. Whatever happens next, he said, you still have a choice to walk away. She looked back at him briefly. No, she replied calmly. That choice ended yesterday. Then she stepped into the hallway, closing the door quietly behind her. For the first time in many years, Nina Walker was not simply surviving circumstances. She was shaping them. The next evening, the Caldwell estate felt more guarded than usual. Nina noticed the change immediately. Security personnel moved with increased alertness, their conversations quieter, their eyes more attentive to small details. Something had shifted beneath the polished surface of the household. Power often sensed disturbance long before danger became visible. Nina kept her routine unchanged. She vacuumed the main hallway, replaced flowers in the foyer, and prepared tea trays exactly as instructed. Experience had taught her that consistency protected suspicion from forming. People noticed disruption, not discipline. Still, she observed everything. 2 unfamiliar vehicles had arrived late in the afternoon, both dark sedans with tinted windows. One remained parked near the side entrance longer than necessary. Nina memorized the license plate numbers without appearing to look directly. At 6 o'clock, Caldwell returned home. His expression appeared calm, but Nina noticed the subtle tension in his posture as he handed his coat to Mrs. Porter. His eyes moved briefly across the room, measuring something unseen. Men accustomed to control often recognized when circumstances shifted outside their expectations. During dinner service preparations, Nina entered the kitchen pantry and reviewed the evening schedule posted on the wall. Caldwell had canceled a planned guest visit. Instead, he requested privacy. Privacy meant opportunity. Nina carried a tray of tea into Caldwell's study shortly after sunset. She kept her gaze lowered as expected, but her attention remained sharp. Caldwell stood near the window, speaking quietly on the phone. "No, I want confirmation," he said, his voice controlled but firm. "We cannot afford mistakes now." He paused, listening. "I understand the timeline, but I expect results." He ended the call as Nina placed the tea tray carefully on the desk. "Thank you," Caldwell said without looking directly at her. "Yes, sir," Nina replied politely. As she turned to leave, she noticed a folder partially visible near the edge of the desk. Inside were printed documents with financial charts and coded references. She did not slow her pace. Hesitation attracted attention. Invisible people survived longer. Later that evening, Nina passed near the security office again. The door remained closed, but she could hear quiet voices inside. She recognized one of them as Marcus Hale, the name Daniel had mentioned. "No irregularities detected," Hale said. "Everything remains contained." Contained. The word confirmed Daniel's story. Nina continued walking without pausing. Around 8:30, most staff members moved toward the back wing of the house to finalize preparations for the next day's event. Nina used the opportunity to check supply inventory in the lower pantry, a task that often required access to basement storage. Her movements remained natural, unhurried, predictable. When she reached the lower hallway, she noticed the guard assigned to that section had stepped away briefly. Likely a scheduled break. The house functioned on patterns, even when danger existed beneath its foundation. She waited exactly 30 seconds. Then she moved. The steel door felt heavier this time, as if the decision behind opening it carried more weight than the metal itself. She entered quietly and closed it behind her. Daniel looked up immediately. "Something has changed," he said. "Yes," Nina replied. She approached the table and placed another bottle of water beside him. "Security presence increased tonight," she continued. "Caldwell canceled a dinner engagement. That suggests pressure." Daniel nodded once. "They may be accelerating their timeline." "Meaning?" "They may try to force information sooner." Nina considered that carefully. "We cannot delay much longer," she said. Daniel studied her expression. "You have a plan forming." "Yes." "Tell me." Nina spoke calmly, choosing each word carefully. "The guard rotation still follows 4-hour intervals. Between 8:45 and 9:15, movement near this hallway decreases significantly. Most staff transition to the kitchen or service wing." Daniel listened without interrupting. "The biometric lock outside cannot be overridden easily," Nina continued. "But physical keys exist for emergency access. You've seen them?" "Yes." Daniel remained silent, allowing her to continue. "If I retrieve the master key briefly, I can open the outer restraint mechanism. The cuffs themselves require manual release." "Time required?" he asked. "Less than 1 minute if uninterrupted." "And after that?" "You leave immediately." Daniel considered the simplicity of the plan. "What about cameras?" "The hallway camera rotates on a timed arc. There is a blind angle lasting approximately 12 seconds. Daniel gave a faint nod. "You observe everything," he said. "I survive by observing," Nina replied. Silence settled briefly between them. Daniel spoke again. "You understand that once I leave, Caldwell will suspect someone inside the house." "Yes. You may become a target." "I already am," Nina said calmly. Her voice carried no dramatics, only acceptance. Daniel studied her carefully. "You are certain?" "No," Nina replied honestly. "But certainty is a luxury." He respected the answer. "Why help me?" he asked again. Nina hesitated briefly before responding. "When powerful people believe they can destroy lives without consequence, someone eventually proves them wrong." Daniel's expression shifted subtly. He recognized conviction when he heard it. "I will not forget this," he said. "I'm not asking you to remember," Nina replied. "I'm asking you to survive." She stepped closer, examining the restraint locks once more, committing every detail to memory. "If anything changes," she added, "do not resist physically. Compliance keeps them predictable." Daniel gave a faint, approving nod. "You think strategically. I think realistically." A quiet moment passed. Nina glanced briefly toward the steel door. Time remained limited. Tomorrow evening, she said finally. Be ready. Daniel inhaled slowly. I will. She moved toward the door but paused once more. If you regain control of your operations, she said quietly, make sure what you told me about those trafficking routes is true. Daniel met her eyes directly. It is. Good, Nina replied. Justice rarely appeared perfect, but it required choices. She exited the room carefully, closing the steel door without sound. The hallway felt colder than before. Every small detail now mattered. Every movement required intention. For years, Nina Walker had lived cautiously, believing survival depended on patience and discipline. Now survival depended on courage. Nina did not sleep that night. She lay awake listening to the quiet hum of the apartment heater, staring at the faint glow of streetlights reflecting off the ceiling. Every detail of the Caldwell estate replayed in her mind with unusual clarity. The angle of the hallway camera, the timing of the security rotation, the location of the key hook inside the security office. Her plan depended on precision, not luck. Morning arrived gray and cold. Boston moved slowly under winter skies, commuters stepping carefully across patches of ice. As traffic crawled along narrow streets, Nina dressed with deliberate calm, choosing neutral colors that would not attract attention. She tied her hair neatly and fastened her father's silver watch around her wrist. The steady ticking reminded her that hesitation often carried greater risk than action. At the estate, nothing outwardly suggested urgency. Caldwell left shortly after breakfast, speaking briefly with his assistant before entering a black sedan waiting outside the front gate. Nina watched discreetly through the dining room window as the vehicle disappeared down the tree-lined street. Mrs. Porter reviewed the day's assignments with her usual professionalism. We will keep the schedule light today, she said. Mr. Caldwell expects privacy this evening. Yes, ma'am, Nina replied. Privacy again. That word had begun to carry a different meaning. Throughout the day, Nina maintained her normal routine. She dusted bookshelves in the library, polished silver trays in the dining room, and assisted the chef in organizing deliveries. Every movement appeared ordinary, yet her attention remained focused on timing. At 3:15 in the afternoon, Marcus Hale entered the house through the side entrance. Nina recognized him immediately from his controlled posture and alert eyes. He spoke briefly with Caldwell's assistant before moving toward the study. His presence confirmed Daniel's prediction that pressure was increasing. Nina adjusted her pace, neither rushing nor lingering. Around 4 o'clock, she passed near the security office carrying a stack of freshly pressed linens. The door was partially open. Inside, 2 guards reviewed surveillance monitors showing camera angles from the exterior grounds. One of them stepped away to answer a phone call. The other leaned back in his chair, momentarily distracted by something on his tablet. Nina did not pause. She continued walking calmly, storing the detail for later. By early evening, snowfall had begun again, light but steady. The muted quiet of winter created a sense of isolation around the estate. Sound carried differently in cold air, making small movements easier to hear. At 6:30, most staff gathered briefly in the service kitchen for instructions regarding the following day's event preparations. Nina listened attentively, nodding at appropriate moments. Routine created cover. At 7:10, she noticed the lower hallway momentarily empty. Her pulse quickened slightly. The rotation window had begun. She carried a folded cloth bundle as if delivering fresh supplies to basement storage. Her pace remained consistent with previous evenings. Predictability discouraged attention. As she approached the security office, she noticed the cigarette break Daniel had anticipated. One guard stepped outside briefly through the side terrace door, collar raised against the cold wind. Inside the office, the master key hung exactly where she had seen it before. Brass. Unremarkable. Dangerous. Nina entered without hesitation, placing the cloth bundle on a nearby counter as if completing routine inventory work. She moved carefully, but without urgency, lifting the key from its hook and slipping it into the fold of fabric. Less than 3 seconds, her breathing remained steady. She exited the office and continued down the hallway. No one called after her. No one noticed. The steel door waited at the end of the corridor. Nina listened briefly for approaching footsteps before inserting the key into the manual override lock. The mechanism released with a muted click. Inside, Daniel straightened slightly in the chair. "It's time," she said quietly. She moved behind the chair and examined the cuff restraints closely. The locking system required precise alignment of the release pin. Her hands remained steady despite the urgency of the moment. "You may feel dizzy when circulation returns," she said calmly. "I'll manage," Daniel replied. The first cuff released with a soft metallic snap. Daniel's shoulders shifted slightly as pressure eased from his wrists. The second cuff required more force, the metal reluctant to disengage after prolonged tension. Nina adjusted her grip and applied controlled pressure. Another click. The restraints opened. Daniel inhaled slowly, bringing his arms forward for the first time in weeks. The motion clearly caused pain, but he did not allow discomfort to slow him. "We don't have much time," Nina said. Daniel stood carefully, bracing one hand against the table as his legs adjusted to supporting his weight again. His balance wavered briefly but steadied quickly. "You can walk?" she asked. "Yes." She handed him a dark maintenance jacket she had hidden inside the cloth bundle. The loose fit helped obscure his physical condition. "Keep your head down," she instructed. Daniel complied without question. They moved toward the door together, their footsteps nearly silent on the concrete floor. In the hallway, the camera continued its slow rotational sweep. Nina counted the seconds silently. 5, 6, 7. The blind angle approached. "Now," she whispered. They moved forward at a controlled pace, neither rushing nor hesitating. Panic created noise. Calm created invisibility. Daniel's breathing remained measured, despite the strain of movement. They reached the service staircase without interruption. Upstairs, distant sounds from the kitchen masked their steps. Normal activity provided protection. At the top of the stairs, Nina paused. "The rear exit leads to the side garden," she said quietly. "From there, the gate camera has limited range due to tree cover." Daniel nodded once. "You've done more than enough," he said. "This isn't finished," Nina replied. They moved through the quiet corridor toward the side entrance. The estate's interior lighting cast long shadows across polished floors. At the door, Nina stopped. "This is where you leave," she said. Daniel studied her expression briefly. "You understand the consequences," he said. "Yes. I will return for you if necessary." "That won't be necessary," Nina replied calmly. Daniel hesitated for a fraction of a second before stepping outside into the cold evening air. Snow muffled the sound of his footsteps as he disappeared toward the darker edge of the property. Nina closed the door softly and returned the maintenance jacket cloth to its storage shelf. Her movements resumed their normal rhythm. Routine again, invisible again, but everything had changed. For the first time since entering the Caldwell estate, Nina Walker had altered the balance of power inside its walls. The absence of Daniel Ross was discovered sooner than Nina had hoped. By mid-morning the following day, tension spread quietly through the Caldwell estate, like an electrical current beneath polished floors. No alarms sounded, no voices were raised, yet something had shifted in the rhythm of the household. Nina sensed it the moment she stepped inside. Marcus Hale stood in the main hallway speaking in low tones with 2 security personnel. His calm posture had hardened into controlled urgency. Caldwell's assistant avoided eye contact with staff members as she moved between rooms carrying folders and sealed envelopes. Even Mrs. Porter's normally steady composure seemed strained. Nina removed her coat and placed it carefully in the staff closet, maintaining her usual pace. Routine remained her strongest protection. People often overlooked those who behaved predictably. Still, she felt the change. At 9:15, Hale entered the kitchen unannounced. His presence alone silenced the quiet morning conversation between staff members preparing breakfast trays. "Has anyone noticed unusual activity in the lower level?" he asked. The question was directed generally, but his eyes studied each face carefully. Mrs. Porter answered calmly. "No irregularities reported." Hale nodded slowly, though his gaze lingered a fraction longer on Nina before moving on. "Increased vigilance is required today," he said. "Mr. Caldwell expects discretion." Discretion often meant containment. As the day progressed, Nina noticed additional security measures quietly implemented. 2 guards now rotated near the service hallway. Surveillance monitors inside the security office displayed more camera feeds than usual. The house functioned normally on the surface, yet every small detail revealed unease beneath the calm exterior. Caldwell returned earlier than expected. Nina observed from the dining room doorway as he entered, his expression composed but colder than usual. He spoke briefly with Hale in the study, the door closing firmly behind them. Moments later, Hale descended toward the basement. Nina continued polishing silverware, her movements precise, her breathing steady. Time passed slowly. 20 minutes later, Hale returned upstairs alone. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Confirmation. Daniel's absence had been discovered. Caldwell summoned all staff to the main hall shortly after noon. His tone remained polite but carried unmistakable authority. "There has been a minor security discrepancy," he announced calmly. "We will conduct routine internal reviews over the next few days. This will not interfere with your responsibilities. No accusation, no panic, only control." People accustomed to power rarely revealed vulnerability openly. Nina lowered her gaze respectfully, presenting the image of quiet cooperation expected in homes governed by hierarchy. Yet inside, her thoughts moved quickly. Daniel would need time. Time to reach allies. Time to prepare protection. Time she was not certain she possessed. Later that afternoon, Hale requested access to staff schedules and movement logs. Nina provided information calmly, ensuring every detail aligned with her normal duties. She answered questions with polite clarity, offering nothing beyond what was requested. Invisible people rarely attracted prolonged scrutiny. Still, she sensed Hale's suspicion searching for irregularities. Around 4:30, Nina entered the staff laundry room to retrieve clean linens. Mrs. Porter stood nearby folding towels. "Security seems tense today," Mrs. Porter observed quietly. "Yes," Nina replied carefully. Mrs. Porter's expression softened slightly. "Houses like this attract complicated problems." Nina nodded politely. Older generations often spoke indirectly about uncomfortable truths. Complicated problems, a gentle phrase for dangerous realities. As evening approached, Nina prepared tea for Caldwell's study once again. Her hands remained steady despite the uncertainty surrounding the situation. She knocked softly before entering. Caldwell sat behind his desk reviewing printed documents. Hale stood near the bookshelf, arms crossed, watching her movements with quiet intensity. "Tea, sir," Nina said. "Thank you," Caldwell replied. His voice sounded measured, almost reflective, as she placed the tray on the desk. Nina noticed a map displayed among the papers. Shipping routes marked in discrete colored lines. Several ports circled in red ink. Daniel's words returned to her mind. "Territory is everything." Caldwell lifted the teacup but did not drink immediately. "Routine provides stability," he said suddenly, his tone conversational. "People underestimate the value of discipline." "Yes, sir," Nina replied respectfully. His eyes met hers briefly, measured, observant. Then he returned his attention to the documents. "You may go," he said. Nina exited calmly, though her pulse quickened. He suspected something, not enough to accuse, enough to observe. After sunset, the estate grew quieter. Snow continued to fall lightly, covering the grounds in a pale stillness that muffled distant sounds. Nina completed her duties methodically, ensuring nothing in her behavior appeared unusual. At 8:20, she noticed Hale leaving the study again, speaking into a secure phone line. "No confirmed external contact yet," he said quietly. "We continue monitoring." Nina passed by without acknowledging the conversation. Normal behavior discouraged attention. Later that evening, as she prepared to leave for the night, Mrs. Porter touched her arm gently. "Be careful driving," she said. "Storms make the roads unpredictable." "Yes, ma'am," Nina replied. Outside, the cold air sharpened her senses. Snow crunched beneath her shoes as she walked toward her car. The quiet street appeared peaceful, yet she could not ignore the awareness that powerful men were now searching for answers beneath the roof she worked under. Daniel had escaped, but the danger had not ended. If anything, it had shifted direction. As she drove home through dimly lit streets, Nina considered the next phase carefully. She had done what she believed was necessary. Now she would need patience again. Patience and discretion. Her phone remained silent. No unknown messages. No hidden warnings. Just the ordinary quiet of winter night traffic. Yet she sensed the balance had changed. People like Caldwell did not accept loss easily. They corrected it. The question now was whether Daniel Ross would keep his word, and whether justice, once set in motion, could reach powerful men accustomed to operating beyond consequence. For the first time since opening the steel door days earlier, Nina allowed herself a single uncertain thought. She hoped she had chosen the right side. The following day began with an unnatural stillness inside the Caldwell estate. Silence in wealthy homes often carried meaning, especially when those who controlled the environment sensed that something had slipped beyond their influence. Nina noticed the change immediately. Staff members spoke more cautiously, footsteps sounded softer, and the usual background music playing through the home speaker system remained turned off. Control was being re-established. Nina kept her routine identical to previous days. She arrived on time, greeted Mrs. Porter respectfully, and began preparing the breakfast room for a small private meeting Caldwell had scheduled with 2 legal consultants. Discipline protected her from unnecessary attention, yet tension lingered in every room. At mid-morning, Marcus Hale returned again. His presence confirmed that Daniel's escape had not been dismissed as a minor inconvenience. Hale's movements were deliberate, his eyes scanning every detail with quiet calculation. Nina carried a tray of coffee toward the conference room, careful not to draw attention to herself. Through the partially open door, she heard Caldwell speaking in a controlled but firm tone. "I want assurances," Caldwell said. "Loose ends create liabilities." One of the consultants responded calmly. "Containment is possible if discretion is maintained." Containment again. The language of damage control. Nina placed the coffee on the side table and exited without interruption, though her mind remained focused on the implication. Caldwell was not reacting emotionally. He was strategizing. That made him more dangerous. Around noon, Hale requested access to staff phone logs, citing internal security protocol. Nina handed over her phone briefly, maintaining calm composure. She had anticipated the request and ensured no unusual messages remained visible. Her communication with Daniel had never existed electronically. Preparation had protected her. Still, the pressure inside the estate continued to build. Later that afternoon, Nina noticed a new instruction posted in the service hallway. Restricted access to lower storage areas until further notice. Hale had tightened internal movement patterns. Caldwell was closing gaps. Nina adjusted accordingly. She focused on tasks that kept her in visible areas, reducing the likelihood of appearing secretive. Predictability discouraged suspicion. At 4 o'clock, Mrs. Porter assigned Nina to reorganize table settings in the formal dining room. The repetitive task allowed her to think clearly. She aligned silverware precisely, adjusting placements by millimeters until symmetry felt exact. Order restored clarity. Justice rarely arrived dramatically in real life. More often, it unfolded quietly through patient decisions. Her father had once told her that courage did not always appear loud. Sometimes courage appeared as persistence. At 5:20, Nina noticed Hale speaking urgently into his phone near the back entrance. "Yes, we traced movement outside the property boundary," he said. "Possibly unrelated, but we remain cautious." Her pulse quickened slightly. Daniel was moving. If he had contacted authorities or allies, Caldwell's network would begin detecting disruptions. Power structures often sensed threats before evidence appeared publicly. That evening, Caldwell remained inside his study for several hours. Nina delivered dinner to the room personally under Mrs. Porter's instruction. Hale stood near the doorway, his presence unmistakably watchful. "Leave the tray," Hale instructed. Nina nodded politely, placing the plate on the desk. Caldwell did not look up immediately. When he did, his expression revealed controlled frustration rather than panic. "We rely on systems," Caldwell said calmly, almost to himself. "When systems fail, we adapt." "Yes, sir," Nina replied respectfully. She exited without delay. His composure confirmed one important truth. He did not yet know how Daniel had escaped. That uncertainty bought time. Night settled over Boston with heavy clouds blocking the moonlight. Snow had stopped falling, leaving the streets coated in hardened white layers reflecting dim street lamps. Nina prepared to leave shortly after 8. As she retrieved her coat, Mrs. Porter spoke quietly. "These past few days feel unsettled," she said. "But storms pass." "Yes, ma'am," Nina replied. She appreciated Mrs. Porter's attempt to maintain normalcy. Older generations valued stability deeply. They believed patience often restored balance. Outside, cold air sharpened Nina's thoughts. Her phone vibrated as she reached her car. Unknown number. Her breath paused briefly before answering. "Nina Walker," a calm male voice said. "Yes. Remain calm," the voice continued. "You are not in danger at this moment." Her heart accelerated slightly. "This line is secure. We were given your contact information as a precaution. Daniel, he asked us to confirm your safety," the man continued. Developments are underway. Nina remained silent, listening carefully. You may notice increased law enforcement activity in the coming days. The voice added. You are advised to maintain normal routine. Understood, Nina replied. The situation will resolve soon. The call ended. No additional explanation. No reassurance beyond practicality. Yet the message confirmed Daniel had reached allies capable of influencing events. Justice often required preparation before revelation. The next morning, news reports began mentioning federal investigations into financial irregularities involving several shell companies connected to East Coast shipping contracts. No names yet, only indications. Nina watched the broadcast quietly while drinking coffee in her small kitchen. Powerful men rarely fell suddenly. They unraveled gradually. At the estate, Caldwell appeared composed, but more guarded than before. Hale remained close by throughout the day, reviewing files and making frequent calls. Pressure was building. Near evening, Nina noticed two unfamiliar vehicles parked discreetly near neighboring properties. Their placement appeared coincidental, but the pattern suggested surveillance. Daniel had moved quickly. Authorities were closing in carefully. Justice did not rush. Justice prepared. As Nina completed her final tasks of the day, she understood the situation had progressed beyond her involvement. She had altered the course of events, but the outcome now depended on forces larger than individual decisions. Still, risk remained. Powerful men rarely surrendered quietly. As she stepped outside into the cold evening air, Nina sensed that the quiet tension surrounding the Caldwell estate would not last much longer. Something was approaching, and when truth finally surfaced, it would change more than one life. The morning the truth surfaced, Boston felt unusually bright, as if the city itself sensed a shift approaching. Nina arrived at the Caldwell estate as she had every other day, her posture calm, her pace steady. Routine remained her strongest protection. Yet the moment she stepped through the front entrance, she knew something irreversible had begun. Two unmarked vehicles stood parked discreetly across the street. They did not belong to the usual circle of donors or consultants who visited the estate. Their presence carried the quiet authority of purpose. Inside, the atmosphere had changed. Mrs. Porter greeted Nina politely, but her eyes revealed concern she did not voice. The older woman had lived long enough to recognize when order was about to be disrupted. Mr. Caldwell will be working from home today, Mrs. Porter said carefully. We are maintaining a reduced schedule. Yes, ma'am, Nina replied. The house felt still, yet beneath that stillness, movement gathered like pressure behind a closed door. Marcus Hale stood near the study entrance, speaking into his phone. His calm demeanor had hardened into alert vigilance. Nina walked past with composed neutrality, carrying fresh linens toward the guest wing. At 10:17 in the morning, the front gate intercom chimed. Moments later, 3 individuals entered the estate accompanied by 2 uniformed officers. Their credentials were presented quietly but firmly. Their expressions revealed the practiced restraint of professionals accustomed to sensitive operations. Federal investigators. The word was not spoken aloud, but everyone understood. Caldwell received them in the main sitting room, maintaining the polished composure that had built his reputation over decades. He wore a charcoal suit, his posture straight, his voice controlled. This is unexpected, he said calmly. One investigator presented official documentation. We are conducting inquiries regarding financial transactions linked to several shell corporations associated with your holding companies. Caldwell accepted the papers without visible reaction. I am happy to cooperate fully, he replied. His tone remained courteous, respectable, measured. Power rarely abandoned dignity even when threatened. Marcus Hale remained close, observing each movement with subtle calculation. Nina continued her duties quietly, passing through the hallway carrying a tray of water glasses for the meeting room. Her presence remained unnoticed, as it always had, invisible, yet she felt the shift in balance. The investigators requested access to specific documents. Caldwell's assistant retrieved folders from the study under Hale's supervision. The process unfolded without raised voices or dramatic confrontation. Justice often arrived quietly. By early afternoon, additional officials arrived. Legal counsel, financial analysts, individuals trained to follow patterns hidden inside transactions. Nina overheard fragments of conversation as she moved through the corridor. Unreported transfers. Cross-referenced offshore accounts. Irregular cargo manifests. The structure Daniel had described was beginning to unravel. At 2:45, Marcus Hale exited the study abruptly, speaking urgently into his phone. His composed demeanor showed its first sign of fracture. "Containment is no longer viable," he said. Caldwell's control was weakening. By 4 o'clock, investigators requested access to digital servers connected to Caldwell's international shipping subsidiaries. The atmosphere inside the estate grew heavier with each passing hour. Nina maintained her routine, polishing glassware, replacing fresh towels, carrying tea, invisible, yet aware that decisions made in silence days earlier had triggered consequences now impossible to reverse. Shortly after 5, another vehicle arrived. This one Nina recognized. Black sedan, unmarked. Daniel Ross stepped out wearing a dark overcoat, his posture composed though his recent injuries remained visible in the careful way he moved. He did not enter dramatically. He entered as a man certain of the moment. Inside the main hall, Caldwell stood facing the investigators, maintaining dignity even as pressure closed around him. Daniel's presence altered the atmosphere immediately. Marcus Hale's eyes narrowed slightly, understanding the shift. "So," Caldwell said quietly, his voice calm but colder now, "you survived." Daniel met his gaze evenly. Some people don't disappear as easily as others expect. Caldwell folded his hands calmly. "You misunderstand your position," Caldwell replied. "Reputation matters in matters such as these." Daniel's voice remained steady. "Reputation doesn't erase evidence." One investigator stepped forward, acknowledging Daniel briefly before turning attention back to the documentation. Caldwell's legal advisor requested clarification regarding procedural scope. Formal language filled the room. Yet beneath professional courtesy, truth moved steadily toward exposure. By early evening, authorities had secured digital records, financial statements, and communication logs linking Caldwell to networks he had believed safely concealed. Control had slipped beyond recovery. Marcus Hale exited quietly before formal questioning intensified. His departure did not go unnoticed, but authorities prioritized securing documentation. Power structures rarely collapsed neatly. They fractured gradually. As the investigation continued, Nina completed her duties quietly, maintaining the same composure that had protected her from suspicion throughout the ordeal. At 6:30, one investigator approached her discreetly. "You are Nina Walker?" he asked quietly. "Yes," she replied. "You may be asked to provide a statement later," he said calmly. "You are not considered a suspect." "I understand," Nina answered. By nightfall, Caldwell remained inside the study, accompanied by legal counsel. The estate that once symbolized influence now felt subdued, its authority diminished. Justice had begun its work. Outside, the air felt crisp and still. Daniel waited near the garden path, maintaining distance from the main activity inside the house. Nina stepped outside briefly after finishing her shift. For a moment, neither spoke. Boston's evening lights reflected softly across the snow-covered ground. "You kept your word," Nina said quietly. Daniel nodded. "You made that possible." She studied him carefully. He looked stronger already, though fatigue remained visible in the careful way he held himself. "What happens now?" she asked. "The process continues," Daniel said. "Evidence moves forward. Decisions follow." "And you?" "I rebuild what deserves rebuilding," he replied. She considered his words carefully. Trust did not appear suddenly. It developed through consistency. "You didn't have to come back here," she said. "Yes," Daniel replied quietly. "I did." Silence settled briefly, but it felt steady rather than uncertain. "Your mother's treatment," Daniel added. "Arrangements have been made." Discreetly, Nina exhaled slowly, emotion restrained but present. "You didn't need to do that." "Yes," he said again. "I did." The simplicity of the answer carried more weight than promises. Sometimes loyalty formed in unexpected places. "Justice isn't always loud," Nina said thoughtfully. "No," Daniel agreed. "But it matters." They stood quietly for a moment longer, the cold air sharpening clarity. "Dinner tomorrow," Daniel said finally. "Nothing complicated. A public place." Nina considered briefly, then nodded. "All right. No promises beyond the moment. No dramatic declarations. Only the quiet beginning of something earned through trust rather than convenience." As Nina walked toward her car, she realized her life had changed not because she had sought danger, but because she had refused to ignore truth. Some choices reshaped the future long before consequences appeared, and sometimes, the people who walked into darkness did not remain there. This story reminds us that courage does not always belong to the powerful, but often to ordinary people who refuse to ignore injustice. Nina did not seek danger or recognition. She simply chose not to look away when confronted with the truth. The story shows that integrity is not about living without fear, but about acting despite it. It also reveals that power without morality eventually collapses, while quiet loyalty and personal honor can create change stronger than influence or wealth. Justice may arrive slowly and imperfectly, but when individuals choose conscience over comfort, even the most hidden wrongs can be brought into the light. This video is a work of fiction created with the assistance of artificial intelligence. All characters, events, and situations are not real and do not represent any actual people or true stories. The content is intended for storytelling and emotional illustration only.